at 10, anatomically correct Enard. Okay, no joke, I find this actually terrifying. Like a realistic metal zombie in a way. Anatomically correct Enard is best described by its name. It's a version of Enard where the metal parts that surround his body, his innards I guess, are actually anatomically correct. Like they would form what looks like actual muscles. So there's more around the chest and they're like in the direction that like the muscle tendons and stuff would be under your skin. And that makes it horrifying and just terribly uncomfortable to look at, especially his face. And like, you know that, you stare at my face all day in videos, like you get what I mean. I don't know what it is about this Enard's face, but like without the mask he just looks like a terrifying villain out of a Scooby-Doo movie, but like more realistic. Like if the latest iteration of like the live action Scooby Gang with like Robbie Amell as Fred Jones had gotten a third movie and they actually tried to make it scary, this is what they would be. Like, why is this necessary? Who felt compelled to make this, and why did you subject me to it as well? Look, I'm sorry if you didn't know about this, but whoever made it, it's their fault, not mine. Wait, if it's anatomically correct, does that mean it has a... And at 9, Nightmare Balora. Nightmare Balora is a piece of work, holy crap. With thin like needles and that signature torn and battered nightmare aesthetic, this is what I expect when I think about a nightmare version of a character we have already seen. However, I'm getting some serious Fuerza from Flash Season 7 vibes here, especially from this image posted onto the FNAF subreddit by user Demolition Inevitable. And the rest of these are just terrifying, okay? Even the ones that most people would consider bad are actually messed up. This is the first animatronic on this list that really made me feel unsafe. And at 8, Ignited Funtime Freddy. Ah yes, a throwback to the meta numbers. A fan edit of a fan game. The Ignited animatronics from the fan game The Joy of Creation. A game where you play as Scott Cawthon and his family after he retires from FNAF and the animatronics come after him. Uh-oh, that sounds frighteningly familiar. But these animatronics are more destroyed than their previous counterparts, basically having their withered versions be set on fire, as I guess they tried to escape the hellscape that is the FNAF world. So that in essence is what Ignited Funtime Freddy looks like. Take a withered version of Funtime Freddy and then set them on fire and you'll basically have Ignited Funtime Freddy. With missing exosuit, casing on his legs pretty much every time, and other exposed bits of endoskeleton. Scott would be glad that at least in the game's universe he ended it before Sister Location was even a thought, since even Bon Bon is after him this time. And we all know how that's gonna end. And at 7, Spring Lich. Spring Lich was meant to appear in the FNAF fan game Dormitibus, another game that I'd love to come back to in order to find scary animatronics. There wasn't much planned for Spring Lich, but he was present in the Dormitibus beta. Modeled by Golden Nexus, Spring Lich is a green version of what seems to be Springtrap, with similar proportions to the head. However, this game was released before FNAF 6, so that's probably just a coincidence. Spring Lich's head is on backwards, meaning that he walks backwards while looking at you, and this was planned to be part of his minigame, since it would then make it possible for him to be tripped and stumble to actually like kinda get away. The character appears to be a springlock victim, but with not much remaining on the inside. However, you can also see scratches and tears on the outside, like with all worn down animatronics. Someone needs to use better fabric for these guys. And at 6, Shadow Spring Bonnie. Shadow Spring Bonnie is one of the 2 primary antagonists of Final Nights 2. He is also one of the final animatronics in the game. Shadow Spring Bonnie resembles Springtrap, as to be expected when mentioning springlock suits, and similar to Springtrap, he lacks the suit on his feet and has a majority of his right ear missing. Overall, he has rips, but he's not really missing any limbs or parts at all, which is a stark contrast to the burnt animatronics from the first 4 nights of that game. His face glows white, which is notable when he's in the hallway, but also gives him a more sinister appearance, and pushes that something supernatural idea like most Shadow animatronics have, like Shadow Bonnie from FNAF AR. Shadow Spring Bonnie takes the roles of Burnt Freddy and Burnt Foxy on night 5, so he's very fast, and the player has to seal the vent quickly, or else they'll get jump scared, and he also may appear in the hallway. Although you can never use the flashlight on this character, otherwise you'll get insta-kill. Inspect his face when he appears outside the door though, and if he's twitching, you'll need to close the door. A rattling sound will let you know when he's on the left, but the fact that you need to look at his face to see if you're in danger is horrifying, especially when most of what you need to do in these games relies on fast reflexes. Halfway through into number 5, Reaper Puppet. Ah yes, my arch nemesis, the Reaper Puppet. If you didn't know, the Reaper Puppet was the first fan animatronic ever featured on this channel. The first FNAF FNAF video by me on the channel was on January 29, 2020 though. Can you believe that? It's been nearly 2 years. And the video I'm talking about came out a month later on February 24th, 2020. So I have a long history with this character. The Reaper Puppet, along with Shadow Bonnie and the brother from Final Nights 1, are the only animatronics in the entire Final Nights series to start off the night outside. Reaper Puppet appears to be a counterpart to the original series puppet, though it is only the Reaper Puppet's head that is similar to the core series puppet. The rest of its body is dark shades of black, and it has a long, stretching arms with sharp fingers at its hand. It's like the Grim Reaper, okay? Like a Reaper Puppet. He has multiple tentacle-like legs as well, which only makes me more sus. The Reaper Puppet can easily be mistaken for a tree, and its legs are like long roots and the shoulders look like branches, but this thing is so creepy and I always include it on this list. But I was so creeped out when I first saw this animatronic. Like how kids in Fazbear Frights are drawn to the restaurants, I'm drawn to the Reaper Puppet. In at 4, Slasher Fredbear. Slasher Fredbear by DeviantArt user PlayStation Jedi is an unholy abomination that must be stopped. I've talked about the Slasher animatronics before, particularly in the Bonnie alternate versions list. However, Slasher Fredbear is so much worse. He may not have a shotgun axe guitar, but oh my god. Let me read the description of this animatronic in the words of PlayStation Jedi himself. Quote, "The largest and strongest of all slasher animatronics, Slasher Fredbear is an unstoppable force with enhanced strength and durability. Fredbear is capable of smashing through walls, withstanding lots of punishment, and grabbing heavy objects and throwing them across the room. While Fredbear uses his great strength to pick up and rip people in half, if he needs a quick kill, he can extend a blade mounted to his wrist to cut through people like butter. Or if he needs a ranged attack, he can use his 2 wrist-mounted LMG guns. Fredbear can switch between these weapons on the fly, either using 2 LMG guns, 2 blades, or 1 on each wrist." What the actual fuck? LMG stands for light machine gun, by the way, okay? Holy mother Christ. Like, this guy is going to make me cry myself to sleep, not to mention the spikes covering his body and the incredible amount of blood soaking him, because of course he does. Of course he needs it. And at 3, Sinister Baby. The Sinister animatronics have become somewhat of a staple on these lists for me now, and I mean, it's clear why. While the original Baby is sinister in scheme, this one just looks like it's going to rip your guts out and get inside you, and not in a fun way. The real look to these kinds of things is basically like a repaired nightmare animatronic, with a clean exterior but the sharp teeth of a nightmare. Now, I'm not too sure if this is another fan-made character based off the fan game, or if it was actually going to be in the main fan game that has the Sinister animatronics, but at the very least, Sinister Baby is based on the unfinished and unreleased fan game Sinister Turmoil. And while we got 2 basically demo games to play before the game was ultimately cancelled, we never really got to see this animatronic in action if it wasn't made by a fan of the game. It's terrifying, it's horrific, and it's worthy of the top 3. And ultimately, in at number 2, Havoc Chica. Do I even need to explain? Havoc Chica, aka Maria, is a Havoc animatronic that hails from the Dormitibus universe. She's the Havoc version of Chica, obviously, and is a failed attempt by the Havoc Puppet to give her spirit a physical form. While having the same color scheme as Chica, the two look nothing alike, thankfully. The mask Havoc Chica wears has a good amount of damage done to it. Her right eye socket has grown in size, arching upwards towards her feathers. The rest of her mask has small withering in a few places, mainly near her right eye socket and her forehead. She has no eyes, resulting in her being blind. Her jaw isn't directly connected to her head like the Chica from FNAF 1. Instead, her jaw looks more like her withered counterpart. Her jaw, in addition to this, has withering on both sides of it and some towards the front. Her entire head is attached to a suitless limb segment, making her head stick out from her body, and it's grotesque and nauseating to look at. She looks like this. Finally, in at number 1, Sinister Freddy. Sinister Freddy, while potentially being the thumbnail for this video, was also intended on releasing with the cancelled Sinister Turmoil fan game. Instead of the full game, however, we got Sinister Turmoil Sewers, which is a small section of what would have been the full game. Sinister Freddy is a brown animatronic bear with a lighter shade of brown on his stomach, snout, and the insides of his ears. He appears to have damage on his suit, but still has the sharp teeth and no eyes. His whole suit appears to be severely withered, having large rips and tears on several pieces of his body, and Sinister Freddy sports large needle-like weapons on his wrists, kinda like hidden blades, but they're not hidden at all. He also appears to have small geometrically shaped claws and nails. Sinister Freddy also has a mouth with sharp teeth, as per usual, and some under his body that you can actually see if you look really closely, but you don't want to get too close, otherwise he's gonna bite your head off like Pennywise. I don't like it, but it's absolutely terrifying and deserved to be number 1, even over the Dormitibus animatronics, so yeah. And at 10, Reaper Balloon Boy. Reaper Balloon Boy was introduced in Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awoken before being brought back in Final Nights 4 Fates Entwined. However, his Final Nights 4 appearance is much worse, so we'll be focusing on that one for this number. Reaper Balloon Boy's body appears to be immense for a small animatronic. He has long extending arms with blue and red striped sleeves, and has protruding fingers at the ends of his hands. I mean, like, of course they're protruding, but like it's weird. He also has many red scratches all over his body, possibly resembling human cuts. In Final Nights 4, however, his appearance becomes more disfigured and rough, with his face and fingers being stretched out even more and sporting multiple sharp-looking blades on his propeller cap. Reaper Balloon Boy appears in Investigation 4 in Final Nights 4, and he, along with the other Reaper animatronics, try to attack Max Donovan in the hospital bedroom. If the player hears him laugh, they must go up and shine a light on him with the flashlight to repel him. The weirdest thing about this animatronic, though, is that his museum description reads, quote, "not related to Danny DeVito." And at 9, Motorcycle Balora. This is on the list because it's weird, okay? Look, it's not scary, but it is definitely weirder than a lot of things that we've seen here, so yeah, I mean, honestly, it probably should have been higher. Someone turned Balora into a motorcycle though, and I don't know why. Look, I'm all for whatever you're into, okay? No judgment zone here, as long as it's legal and doesn't put anyone in danger. But this obsession with riding Balora, okay, at this point, it's too much. It puts my mental stability in danger, and honestly, that's already dancing on the fence, so even like the slightest push will send me spiraling towards even more FNAF madness. Like, why? Why did you do this? What compelled you to make this character? And what the hell is her back wheel made of? And at 8, Steampunk Freddy. No doubt inspired by the Steampunk event for FNAF AR, Steampunk Freddy is one of the tamer variants on this list. And while changing the character to be steel and gold may do the trick, the different interpretations are what make this version weird enough for this list. Particularly the Steampunk Titan Funtime Freddy created by Hero Golem on DeviantArt. This thing looks like a beast and would honestly make me throw my pants at it. I don't know. Okay, look, they're more so weird rather than scary, however, making their original appearance in the fan alternates of Funtime Freddy list, even if they aren't gold and are instead purple. I have no doubt that this thing would still crush me in a dark alley. I'm too scared to say this thing that isn't steampunk because there's no copper. It doesn't look steampunk, but it also is steampunk, okay? If I say that he's not steampunk, as soon as I step off screen, he's gonna snap my neck. And this is only number 8. This is already weird, okay? Just wait until you see the others. This is gonna be a wild list, so stick around. Speaking of sticking around, why don't you do us both a favor and hit that like button and subscribe? It really helps us out and helps the channel grow. And at 7, Fredtrap. To be honest, I searched this up just for the hell of it, and there are actually Fredbear versions of Springtrap. Fredtrap is exactly what you'd expect. Springtrap's look on a yellow Freddy animatronic. The designs are actually really well made, and honestly are weirder than normal Springtrap to me. I guess bears in this case are weirder than bunnies, or I guess we've grown up with Springtrap, but I think that Scott made William use the Spring Bonnie suit because of how scared Scott himself was of Bonnie, but that could just be idle speculation. There are also even more rundown versions and even scrap versions of Fredtrap, which are actually haunting and less weird. But still, either way, it would still be William inside the suit and being kept alive by the spirit of a dead kid, and yeah, that's weird enough in normal FNAF, so here you go. And it's 6, Endo Baby. No, okay? That's all I'm gonna say about this thing. While Baby may not be the scariest animatronic, at least they aren't whatever the Rocky Horror Picture Show bullshit this is. Removing the animatronic casing from Baby just makes the character bone-chilling. And not even in like a scary way, like in a really uncomfortable way. Why does it need so much interior if it's an animatronic? Just make a normal endoskeleton with a containment chamber and like a grabby arm thing. You don't need all these extra embellishments and cords. I get that they have to fit the technology in there, but this is a universe with discs that can change what you see based on sound. They made the technological reality stone, but can't make her inflate balloons using a normal endoskeleton? Actually, now that I think about it, that might actually just be worse. Still, why the hell would you do this in any capacity, okay? Just leave her casing on. Undress it with your eyes like normal people do. Normal. Halfway through at number 5, Havoc Puppet. Havoc Puppet is responsible for the creation of every animatronic in Dormitibus, a FNAF 3 fan game, with the exception of one. Havoc Puppet is formed by a cracked and distorted version of the puppet's original mask, which is missing its lower half. And the head has a small hole above the place its mouth would be, and then 2 white pinprick pupils inside empty sockets with presumably pitch black everything else. The lower missing half of the main mask actually features 7 black tentacle-like extensions, 3 at the back and 4 at the front. The side 2 are used as legs, while the other 2 front ones are presumably like arms, and then the back 3 tentacles seem to be like tails. I don't get it. She also has a crack on the top of her head. Okay, this thing is wrong. It looks like a giant messed up spider, and we know how I feel about spiders. I hate them, but this is still weird as hell, even for a puppet. In at 4, Fusion Baby. While I applaud the creativity here, these fusions of Baby with other Funtime animatronics are just frickin' weird. Whether it be putting Funtime Foxy's color scheme and ears on Baby, or just plopping Funtime Freddy's head on her body, the horror that is the fusion concept shakes me to my core. And honestly, even thinking about it, I want to stop recording this video. It's one of those things where like I hate it and it irks me in the worst way, but I still can't look away. Like when you want to watch something that you hate to see if you can handle it and you can't. Like that's me with these fusions. It's like a video of a spider, okay? I'm intrigued, but also I'm disgusted, so I'm avoiding it. Like, what the hell? Why do these work so well? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Buff Enard. Okay, I looked this up as a joke because Buff Helpy, and it turned out to be a thing, and that makes me upset. This can either be Enard with just more endoskeleton stuff, like wires, tubes, tentacles, I don't know what to call it, but like that metallic stuff on his insides that makes him look more muscular, or it could just be adding more shell onto him and then giving him a speed up. That's the more popular one, unfortunately. And then there's the version that gives him a skin tone, and that's just messed up. Why is this a thing? Why did someone subject me to this? Because now you all have to see it. It's just, I don't know what else to say. It's nightmare fuel. It's at least as much nightmare fuel as Buff Helpy, okay, and you know that. I prefer Buff Helpy to this. At least Helpy is nice and he doesn't want to kill you and then shove himself inside you. That sounds weird, but you know what, I'm rolling with it. Helpy just wants to jump in balls. In a ball pit, okay? Buff Enard just makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like that one time I went to the gym all over again. And yes, I went to a gym once. Thank you. But ultimately, in at number 2, Diner Enard. Michael Afton. The boy who lived, come to die. I'm not even making a joke. This just looks like if Enard were Voldemort and watched one too many like makeup tutorials on YouTube. And like when you see it, you'll absolutely agree. This is like the beauty YouTuber of animatronics. If James Charles, Jeffree Star, Tati Westbrook, and Nikki Tutorials had a love child and then killed it with extreme agony so that it could then possess an animatronic and then give itself a makeover, that's what this is. With all their combined genetics and lack of eyebrows, this could actually happen. This is the face of my nightmares. This is the one who was truly behind Dramageddon. And if none of you understand that, this number is truly lost. But you know what? I guarantee 1000% that what I'm saying is perfectly accurate, even if you don't understand it. I had multiple sources. The 2 women who sit next to me verified this. I am right on this. And finally, in at number 1, Breadbear. Oh boy. Breadbear is an animatronic coming from the Day Shift at Freddy series, who was created by Dave by modifying a Fredbear suit. The character appears in Day Shift at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3. Breadbear's appearance is oddly similar to Fredbear, albeit wider. He is a golden colored bear animatronic wearing a purple top hat and bow tie, 2 black and white buttons on his chest, and his gray metallic eyes. Thicker arms and legs, a squarish brown nose, small brown pupils, small white teeth, round ears with the insides colored lighter shades as you know they typically would be, and a very circular shaped stomach with like brownish shades. He's also ripped around his feet and like joints and I don't know. Breadbear also appears for real when Dave modifies an empty Fredbear suit and then unleashes it during the Sting operation on Friday, in which, depending on which route you take, it either attempts to kill Jack, it dies, or destroys the pizzeria and then sets itself on fire. Because of course it does, we love that. No FNAF game is complete without a fire at the end, right? And at 10, Nightmare Funtime Freddy. Well, what did you expect? Of course a nightmare version of Funtime Freddy is going to be on this list. It's basically like a requirement for any animatronic list, because Funtime Freddy is probably one of the creepiest and weirdest versions of them all. Nightmare Funtime Freddy is what you'd guess, in essence a recolored Nightmare Fredbear. actually, instead of Nightmare Freddy, which I guess is understandable, but the real gem comes from when they make the Nightmare version look like the classic, like, plastic toy look that the original Funtimes have. Because I don't know why, but for some reason the Nightmare aesthetic with like the toy look of the Funtimes just makes it absolutely horrifying from both fronts. At this point, I never want toys again, but I'm going to buy various pop figures. I also am going to have nightmares about this version eating other Nightmare animatronics. Like, I think he was doing it to save me, like a Glamrock Freddy situation, but like still, okay, he could snatch me up without a fight. He could rip me in two. Nightmare Funtime Freddy, that's not where your teeth go. In at 9, Nightmare Baby. Originating in the fan game Baby's Nightmare Circus, I believe, or just being the basis for it, Nightmare Baby is pretty damn spooky. Being the likely originator for the stomach mouth present on the other Nightmare animatronics already made the thought of her as a nightmare terrifying, but throw in the classic Nightmare rundown aesthetic again despite being a plastic casing, like with Nightmare Funtime Freddy, and the countless sharp teeth in the animatronic mouth, this thing will make you see stars. Oh, and adding the Nightmare look to animatronics that can already move their face was bad enough, but thinking about it or actually seeing their face move and like reveal a Nightmare endoskeleton is even worse. In at 8, Nightmare Toy Chica. Nightmare Toy Chica is honestly what you'd expect from a Nightmare version of your favorite chicken robot. Not robot chicken, chicken robot. All the glory of Toy Chica with the horror of a nightmare, the countless sharp teeth, the stomach mouth, torn body even though they're a toy in plastic so it doesn't really make any sense, it should just be cracked. Exposed endoskeleton, you name it, she's got it. She's got it going on. And those without a beak are even worse than you'd expect. You'd expect that without the beak there would be less teeth, but no. In fact, they have the same amount of teeth, and they're just ready to bite your head off. If anyone was going to have caused the bite of 87, it would be Nightmare Toy Chica, and not just because of the ultimate custom night line, okay? That's a can of worms that we've already covered in multiple videos. And at 7, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie. Yet another set of animatronics without any Bonnie representation. The security breach Glamrock animatronics, from what we've seen in the trailers so far, don't have a Glamrock Bonnie. He really only appears as the mascot of bowling. However, fans here yet again made Glamrock versions of Bonnie, but those weren't really scary. So in classic FNAF fashion, if you want something to be scarier, you just throw Nightmare in front of it, and then boom, you have an unholy abomination that will eat your soul and devour your balls. Nevertheless, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie looks exactly how you'd expect a Nightmare version of Glamrock Bonnie to look, with shoulder pads. That's the scariest part. And at 6, Nightmare Toy Bonnie. I thought that the Nightmare versions couldn't get any worse, yet here we are. I remember someone commenting on the fan versions of Chica list saying that it was more like a fan versions of Toy Chica list, but the toy animatronics are just another version of the original, so it wasn't a different list. This is a monstrosity that needs to be banished to the depths of hell and then sent by Satan from hell to like the empty because he doesn't want to deal with it. I would understand why. Like, looking this thing up, I didn't expect to be as frightened as I was, but holy ever-loving crap, this shocked me. The toy aesthetic, again, just seems to make these versions worse. I don't know what it is. It's just like the toy animatronics as nightmares just make the absolute scariest versions of the characters. I don't get it. Like, if you have any theories as to why this is a thing, like maybe like a psychological or something, I don't know, leave it in the comments. Halfway through into number 5, Nightmare Enard. The beauty of nightmare versions of animatronics is that they can really be anything. There are plenty of directions to go because everyone will consider different things to be nightmare fuel. Some are very clearly in the style of other nightmare animatronics, you know, lots of sharp teeth, stomach mouths. Some are spider-like versions that are hunched over and wider than they are long. Some have more limbs or are combined with other animatronics like Baby or Funtime Foxy to create a unique nightmare appearance. You can lean more into the clown aesthetic or you go a million miles north and do something that nobody else has done, but that's just nightmares. That's what makes this kind of thing fun. And in doing so, you make something that not even Scott himself would have thought of. And isn't that kind of beautiful? Even if all these versions are making my currently blue pants brown, it's kind of causing me to black out a little bit. And 4, Twisted Nightmare. The Twisted animatronics are probably the most horrific animatronics ever described. These buggers are disgusting and horrific and are only approachable when using illusion discs to make themselves look presentable. I get that. Combine that with Nightmare, who is the scariest nightmare animatronic from the games, and oh my lord, you have one hell beast. Twisted Nightmare is everything you want to avoid when creating something for kids. I can hardly put it into words, honestly. Like, I'm glad that there's nightmares pictures that can be shown, because I honestly don't know how to go about describing this. If Hell's Gates had opened and released the entirety of FNAF lore into real life, and then the joy of creation animatronics emerged, including not just the ones from the game, but literally every other animatronic from the series in an ignited form, and then they all merged and became twisted, that's half of how this demonic monstrosity would have been created. It's wrong, I feel deceived, I feel sharp objects being stabbed into my flesh. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Nightmare Springtrap. Nightmare Springtrap is certainly a sight. Not for sore eyes though, no. If anything, this is going to make your eyes sore. However, every iteration of Nightmare Springtrap basically does the same thing. He gets the classic nightmare teeth, but the rest of him remains largely the same. Maybe he gets a slight change to his ears or his skull shape, but other than that, Nightmare Springtrap is mostly just regular Springtrap. The majority of people believe that Springtrap is already scary, and he already has most of the appearance of a nightmare animatronic, being one of the most destroyed characters in the games, and especially in FNAF 3. One version I saw had like eyes covering all of him, but for the most part he looked either Springtrap or just like a larger fetch, but still terrifying. And ultimately, in at number 2, Nightmare Glamrocks. Nightmare animatronics are designed to be the scariest versions of their respective animatronic. That's why there's so many fan-made versions, because while elements like rugged exosuits and stomach mouths are common, like I said before, you can really head anywhere. Same with scrap versions, especially with scrap versions. However, these nightmare versions are something else. Considering their pristine appearance in the trailers and promo images, well, with the exception of Chica, but there's a stark contrast between these two different versions. They seem to just have the ultimate nightmare aesthetic going on, and it's not even just because they look like plastic toy animatronics. Like, it's like this is like the step up from the nightmare toys. Like, I don't know what it is about these characters specifically. It makes me think some kind of way. Maybe it's because that Glamrock Chica is my bae, and now she's just horrifying even more, but again, that's kind of a kink. Like, I don't get it. Glamrock Bonnie isn't even a thing yet, and their Nightmare Glamrock version is scarier than their normal Nightmare version. I know that Bonnie got his own number, I wanted to reiterate, okay? Stay away from these if you can, and the reason these are higher is because it's a whole group of them. And finally, in at number 1, Hellmare. This was another animatronic that was recommended to me, this time in the comments of part 1 of alternate fan versions of Fredbear, and I can see why. The Hellmare version of Nightmare Fredbear is probably the absolute single most horrific FNAF-oriented thing I have ever seen. Like, I'm going to have to make a whole list about the Hellmare animatronics or something, because this is the absolute craziest shit that I have ever seen. How did I not know about these before? Hellmare Fredbear can only be described as a true nightmarish abomination from hell, and so the name is accurate. This thing had not one, not 2, but 3 separate mouths, 2 heads. But not only does it have 2 heads, those heads are reversed from one another. So the head on top and the one on the bottom, they spin 180 degrees, and you either get Nightmare or you get Nightmare Fredbear. Yeah, this dude is both animatronics combined, and I didn't even see that at first. Once I noticed it, I'll admit, I might have peed my pants a little bit, okay? Come on, 2 heads, 2 sets of 4-fingered hands, and half of these parts being Nightmare, and half of them being Nightmare Fredbear. Look, I'm not usually actually scared when it comes to these things. I play it up for the camera and for entertainment, and that's why I'm so, like, light and fluffy on camera. Like, yes, they're scary, but I'm not actually worrying about them. I'm not playing this up. This is probably going to actually give me nightmares. Like, what kind of hell-raising, sadistic motherfucker came up with this idea?